The following strange and often terrifying encounters happened, and what's more, they could happen to anyone. Turn the lights down low and hide under your bed sheets, because the truth is we're not safe. The real world is far more terrifying than anything we can make up. When my brother and I were around 4 out of 5, we lived in a house that was about 100 years old. One day we were walking up the stairs when we saw a tall man in a black coat and top hat walk into the living room, which was to the left of the bottom of the stairs. A bit freaked out, we thought our dad was pranking us, so called out for him. Shit. Both parents came out of the kitchen, opposite side of the stairs, and isolated from the living room. I hadn't thought about it for a long time, and we never spoke about it. Then about a month ago, my daughter asked if I believed in ghosts, so I told her the story. Literally seconds later, my phone bleeps. It was my brother saying I was just talking to partner about paranormal stuff. Do you remember the guy in the top hat? Okay, this is my go-to scary story that happened to me. When I was about 10 or 11 years old, I stayed up sort of late. When I got to bed, I was still feeling restless. I pulled all of my blankets around me and tucked myself against the wall. My twin bed was flush with the wall. I was in bed awake for probably an hour when I started hearing a rather unsettling noise. Muffled crying. I focused on it, hoping it was my imagination or I was asleep. After a few minutes, I needed to see what it was. I turned around in bed to see a woman in a dress standing at the far side of my room, crying into her hands. Her hair was matted and her clothes tattered. She was about 7 or 8 feet tall, crammed under the ceiling. After a few seconds, she looks up at me and screams, but it sounded like it was coming from far away. She made eye contact with me, turned around and walked through the wall. I stayed awake that night. When I was maybe 6 or 7, I was staying the night at my grandparents' house. I was on the couch trying to sleep when I heard whispering. They had a painting of my aunt hanging on the wall in the living room, and it was talking to me. Nothing creepy though. It was talking the way my aunt would talk to me, asking me if I was behaving in typical aunt talk. She tells me to wake my grandfather up because she needs to talk to him. I did, and when he realized she wasn't there, he began scolding me. In between threats and insults, he noticed someone moving outside the window. He grabbed his pistol and told me to stay in the room with my grandmother. A minute or two later, we hear a gunshot. Turns out there is a prison for young adults about 20 miles from where they live. 3 of them killed a guard and escaped. They were sizing the house up to take his truck and whatever they could, but he saw them first. Ended up shooting one of them in the shoulder. I have no idea why that fucking picture was talking to me. They'd never experienced ghosts before or since. I live in the north of Switzerland. We have a lot of old military bunkers from the Second World War. When I was 7 or 8 years old, 3 friends of mine and I went out to explore one of these bunkers, who was built on a hill inside a small forest. The main door was jammed, so we had to break it up. We found a big log nearby and used it as a battering ram. After many tries, the door won't budge. But there was a peephole. It was about 10 centimeters for an inch in diameter. We opened it and illuminated the dark inside. There was a long, ruined and dark hallway with rooms on the left and right side. We couldn't see the end of the hallway. It was just too long. Every one of us wanted to catch a glimpse of the inside, when one of my friends says, "There is a small light at the end of the hallway." This light was not there when I watched Trough the peephole. So I pushed him away and took a second look. What I saw gave me a shiver. There was not a small light. It looked more like a flashlight pointed directly towards me, and behind it was a silhouette of a person. I walked a few steps back and said, "There is someone in there." At the same moment, someone, or something, knocked on the door from the inside of the bunker. This was the moment we got into panic, start screaming and run away. I was so scared I ran straight home and locked the door. On the next day in school, my friends and I talked about the event. We came to the explanation that probably some older kids have played a prank on us. 1 week later, we went to the same bunker again. But as we saw, the welded connection that should keep the door locked were rusty and not broken, we just left without saying a word to each other. It was impossible someone opened this door before us, and this was the only entrance. I still live in the same region. Standing in front of this door again was not very comfortable. The story happened 20 years ago, but it still looks the same. My friend and I time traveled, or that is the easiest explanation. We were in high school and he was taking my bus back to my house with me. We get home around 2:45 and my mother gets home around 3 o'clock. We decided to go hiking before my mother could say no, so we left a note on the counter and took off. We took our usual route up the backyard hill, making sure to avoid the crazy people that resided in makeshift homes up there. Climbed some trees for a while, explored a section of the car graveyard we hadn't checked out before, and other typical teenage exploring type stuff. We took a break near the top of the mountain. It was unusually beautiful that day. Incredibly green, and there were seriously visible light beams shining down through the canopy. Like seriously pretty stuff. So of course, I start running around through the light and decide we should probably start getting back, cause my mother was probably gonna be pissed if we missed dinner. On the way back, we stumbled onto a pond we had never encountered before. It was small and had a single wooden boat on it. There were also a few teepees around the pond. Not old teepees, they looked ratty and unusable. We decided someone was probably living there and took a new path back home. We climbed down and up an old quarry and dropped off on the main road that leads to my house. We were absolutely filthy and over a mile from my place. We just walked the road back to my house. We arrived home before my mother, which seemed strange, so I threw out the note so she wouldn't know we were out gallivanting. She got home like 3 minutes later, wondering how we had gotten so dirty at school. She arrived home at her usual time, and we had only been gone a grand total of 13 to 15 minutes. We honestly don't even talk about that day anymore. It's too confusing. But yeah, time travel.